Stuart, I have a question, Bob Sink.
Yes, Bob.
When I'm doing, when I'm focusing on inner work, sometimes things go quickly and smoothly, and other times things seem to take a very long time. And how best to approach those kinds of situations?
Well, look, I have the same problem, Bob. Things don't always move so quickly in my life. I feel like some opening is possible, then there are great obstructions and resistances. I have the same thing, What do? I have patience with it. And I understand that you get very strong when you work through situations that are difficult. Maybe you get stronger when things are difficult and you've got to kind of, just kind of, crawl in. It's like that Japanese, Zen say, climb Mount Fuji, O snail, but slowly, slowly. And we have to learn that everything takes its time and everything will happen within its time. And when things are, really not easy and we feel like things are moving very slowly, we have to understand that working under those circumstances usually makes a person much stronger. It makes a person ultimately go much deeper inside himself or herself. Because it's not easy when you're stuck in the mud and you move up a mountain and, and your feet, you can't, it's not easy. But the work that one does on themselves under those circumstances creates a really strong inner life. Because you discover that when the going is not easy, you can get through it. You can truly build an inner life that is strong enough to get to the other side of it. Rudy always used to talk about the tortoise and the hare, that old fable. And most of us are like the hare, But we need to learn how to sustain the work and how to understand that those difficult times are also just times that could make us very, very strong. And the incredible thing is that everybody goes through it. And look, I've been doing this work for a really long time. I had a couple of months just recently that I thought I would never get through them. And then maybe a week ago, it started opening in such a profound way that it took me to a whole new level of consciousness within myself. But while I was going through the other, it was the kind of period of my life that, that time when one crazy thing follows another. You get through one, then suddenly you have another and another and another. And I said, well, when is this going to stop? And then I also realized, Stuart, this is what you have to work with at this point of your life. Work with it, transform it, grow because of it. Don't let it bring you down. So you're not alone in this, Bob. I suspect there isn't a person in this class right here who can't relate to that question. I don't know if there's a person in the world that can't relate to that question. And is there an answer? Well, there's no rational answer other than continue to do your inner work. It all passes. You make it through that particular tunnel, using a shovel to dig through the mountain. You'll get really strong. And when the going is easier and things move at a delicious speed and everything is working in life, we don't live with the illusion that it's going to be this way forever, because it never is. It's both, and both are pathways to God. I mean, I've written books, one book I wrote took me 3 weeks to write the story. And it took 13 years to craft it into a novel. But the actual story was written, I mean, I was on a high, it just kept pouring out of me. And then when it was finished, I said, oh, now I got to do the real work. And then it took 13 years to make it into a book. And, I certainly learned a lot about perseverance, about diligence, about patience, about mastering a craft. And, look, meditation is simply mastering a craft, and to be able to use that craft under any circumstances. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome. I hope this is clear, because I think what Bob brought up is relevant to everybody. And we often give up, I mean, I get emails, why is this happening? Why? Why can't it always be, smooth sailing? And it just isn't. I don't understand why. It just isn't. I mean, in life, you climb a mountain just to discover, once you get to the top, there are 20 more mountains you have to climb. And either you give up and say, well, okay, I'll spend the rest of my life on this mountaintop, or you continue to climb, because on the next plateau, there's deeper understanding, a more profound connection with God, so that manifestation of all those mountains is not a threat. It's something you embrace. It's okay. Does anyone else have a question?
I have a question, Stuart.
Yes.
I just spent this last week camping in the wilderness in Eastern Oregon. And every day when I meditated and looked at the stars, etc., my meditation was stronger. And I can't just go live in the middle of nowhere, but it was so much easier for me to be in that state of grace than when I'm home. And I would just like to ask you, to talk about that.
You know, Christine, honestly, I didn't quite understand what you were.
Oh, I was out in camping this week in Eastern Oregon in the middle of nowhere. And every day with my meditation, it was stronger, and looking at the stars at night, I felt really at peace. And I came back tonight to my world, and I just want to know, besides meditating daily, how I can't move into the middle of nowhere, how it was that it was so much easier for me when I was away from everything here in my life.
Well, I mean, it's not a difficult answer. You know, look, you come back to your world, you come back to 50 years of karma that is built up in that world that you have to deal with. And the pressures are much greater. Now, the whole point of this meditation is to transform those pressures into the same stillness you experienced out in the middle of nature. Not to be dismayed by it. And, you know, look, I have that too. I mean, I have to deal with my life. What's the hardest thing we all have to deal with? And that's the day-to-day life that we live. Because that brings tension and pressure and financial things and relationship things and family things and et cetera, you know? And we have to learn how to transform those things into the same stillness that you experience when you're out in the middle of nature. Because frankly, if you built a little cabin in the middle of nature, you know, within 2 weeks, you're going to have the same kinds of pressures. You know, if you don't learn how to transform these things and to use these things as a way to grow and a way to build your life. I mean, I've said it a million times. Rudy always used to say a diamond is the product of 50,000 years of the earth's pressure. We all have a diamond in us. We all have a sacred jewel that lives inside, exists inside us. And we need to learn to transform all that pressure into that sacred jewel. Instead of being defeated by it, instead of being upset by it, okay, this is what I have to deal with. I'm alive. I have a way to deal with it. I will work with it, and I will learn how to transform that pressure into the same peace you experienced when you were out in the middle of the forest, wherever you were. Look, you know, when I was a kid, I was 16 years old. My father died when I was 16. So it was probably up until the most traumatic thing that happened to me in my life. And it completely changed my life. But you know what changed my life? The day my father died, I walked into his hospital room and he was lying in bed in a state of complete serenity, total peace. I looked into his eyes. It was as clear. I could see 100 million miles in his eyes. The room was full of light, you know? And I asked his nurse, I told this story a lot, but it's worth telling again because it's applicable to this. I asked his nurse, I said, what is going on there? I'd never seen my father in such a state of peace. And she said to me, just before people die, they enter this state of like, it's just total surrender. They have let go of everything. And they enter like a state of samadhi, a state of peace inside themselves. And in 49 years of having known my father, I never knew him to be one moment that peaceful. And I said to myself, why the hell did he have to wait 49 years to experience this deep sense of ananda, of peace, of bliss in himself, you know, a half hour before he died? And it changed my life, transformed my life. And I said, I have to find out how to do this. I was, you know, pretty insecure, crazy kid. And I said, no, Stuart, you've got to find out how to do this. And I left home, I ran away, I went to Europe. I was a young kid hitchhiking all over Europe. you know, having a girlfriend there and another one there. And always with one purpose in mind, I was on my way to India to find a guru. It took me 20 years later to begin to go to India. But, you know, I found my teacher back in my hometown, which is just, you know, the absurdity of life. You know? But I'm saying I looked for Rudy for 9 years because I knew that I had to find a way to have that peace while I live in the world. That same peace you experienced in the forest, you know? But, you know, it's like, you know, there used to be this Japanese group in New York that I would write lyrics for and they would do music. I mean, you know, Atsuko knew them, you know, and I would write lyrics for them. And one of the lyrics was, I can't remember exactly, it was, I'm in the forest, it's night, you know, the birds are still, the crickets are still, everything is quiet. Why doesn't my mind just shut up? You know, and I wrote this lyric and they made a song out of it. It blew me away. You know, they actually made a song out of it. And what I'm saying, it's just indicative of what you asked, Christine. You know, the birds are still, you know, the animals are still, everything is quiet. There's no wind. Why doesn't my mind just shut up? Well, through the practice of inner work, we learn how to master the mind, whether we're in the middle of Times Square, you know, in gridlock, you know, or we're up in the mountains somewhere and it's peaceful and quiet and there's no noise around us. Wherever we are, we can master that inner quiet because we have built that kind of system inside ourselves. And that's what this is for. It's not, I mean, if you can't be quiet in the midst of gridlock in Manhattan, you understand? I mean, one of the reasons I moved back to Manhattan is I knew if I could do this in Manhattan, I could do it anywhere in the world. You know, living in Stamford, Connecticut is not a big test for me. Being able to, you know, build a system that could sustain that kind of inner quiet in a place like Manhattan. And I only knew it was possible because I saw Rudy do it. Turn the place into it was like a shrine. It was a temple, for God's sake. Everything was sacred. Even gridlock in Manhattan was sacred. You know? So what I'm saying, it's not where you are and what it's what you have done inside yourself to build a system that is strong enough to deal with any circumstance that you find yourself in. And any human being is going to find themselves in so many divergent situations that you can't be dependent upon the external world to maintain an inner peace, because it doesn't work. I remember Rudy was talking about, you know, I mean, you would even get sick and tired of being in heaven. Oh man, I can't stand the pearly gates and I hate, you know, pastel colors and angels fly. I mean, it's all making me crazy, you know? I mean, it's true. We, you know, eventually we take everything for granted and we find things wrong in the most beautiful circumstances. Fall in love with somebody. And the first 6 months, it's wonderful. And then, oh my God, I don't like this. I don't like that. They're making me crazy. You know, you understand? We need to learn to build an inner life that can deal with any circumstance. It'll eliminate road rage. It'll eliminate fights and arguments that we get into people that, you know, make no sense, but we're in the middle of them. It eliminates so much angst and, you know, anger and insecurity. And if we build that kind of system, and then it's not dependent on the external world, it's completely dependent upon the internal world. Because the external world is just a manifestation of your inner life. I mean, lately I have these people sending me all these movies to watch about I think, Eva, you sent me one, you know? And then they sent me another one about, fungi and how that's healing the world and sustain. And this is all great, and I really appreciate the positive nature of these people and what they want to do in life. But the only thing that's missing is people healing themselves. People building inner lives that heal themselves, because I have discovered after 50 years of doing this work, that's the only way the world is going to get healed. We're living in a world that's crazier now than it was 40 years ago. People have to learn how to heal themselves. And then it doesn't matter the circumstances. They can find God in those circumstances.
Mm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So for me, this vacation was like a reboot to get back in the trenches, it feels like.
Well, it's kind of like spiritual boot camp. You can't make excuses for yourself. You have to learn how to deal with it. And you can only deal with it by your inner life, not trying to, play some silly game with manipulating the external world and think it's going to change. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Just a different manifestation of tension. The internal world can change. And then it all becomes our teacher, and you bow to your teacher. You're grateful to your teacher. Does anyone else have a question?
Thank you.
Hey, Stuart. This is Mike. I guess I don't have a question, so I'm sorry for even talking, but I just want to say these talks tonight and everything, and my absence the past couple months has been hard, but these talks tonight have been especially powerful for me. I just feel it on my skin, so it's great to hear you talk about, having the courage to live,
Look, my teacher Rudy once said it takes 9 months to have a baby. And ask any woman what that's all about. It takes 1 second to die. The struggle is giving birth. The struggle is overcoming all the difficulties, the pain, all the crap that we have to go through in life. It's like that book I wrote on Lotus Flower and Muddy Waters. We're all a freaking lotus flower growing out of muddy water. And if we can just remember that metaphor, we will do what we have to do to fix ourselves so that we can deal with the muddy water. It takes 1 second and we're dead, It took 1 second and Rudy was gone. Who I, went with him that day. I never in a million years expected him to take his samadhi that day. And he was gone. But he spent his entire life working on himself and was totally prepared to embrace God in that moment. In fact, I would say the only reason I'm alive is he put his soul inside me. So I don't, this alternative mindset about death, it's just easy. But turning life into something special and spiritual and profound and, nurturing and loving and happy, and this is the work. That's the 9 months, the metaphor of the 9 months of having a baby. And just ask a woman how conscious you have to be in those 9 months in preparing for that soul to come into the world. If they're only as conscious in raising it as they were in having it, maybe the world would be a little bit different, And you owe it to yourself. You know, the purpose of life is to ultimately be a happy person. That's the ultimate goal, is to be a happy person. And then you stop beating yourself up. You're no longer a victim. You're no longer, you know, but that's the work. That's what this meditation is about. And then you know, look, Michael, you missed months. I haven't seen you. You know, you started coming back again. You know, you missed months of how the teachings in this meditation class have transformed themselves over the last 3 months. They're much different now than they were when you left. And all of that, you didn't go through that transformation inside yourself. So now we have to catch up a little. I'm on your side. I'm here to help you do it. But I need your help as well, you know? I can provide a lot of Shakti and a lot of energy and some wisdom occasionally, but I can't do it for people. I need their help. And that means people have to do the work on themselves to transform that negativity into love, into joy, into the thing we were really born here to live with. And when we come to the earth to learn how to transform suffering into happiness, that's why we come here. Not to make money, but to, you know, all the stuff that goes on in the world, the power of the politics, the madness that goes on in the world. You know, yeah, life requires it, but it also requires us to learn how to transform all of that into joy, into love. Instead of being stuck in a swamp with our lips a half an inch above the water. So you do the work, Michael. I'm on your side. I'm here to help you. I've always been here for you, you know? And you came to visit me here. It was very wonderful. And you do the work. And you'll have 100% of my support.
Thanks, Stuart.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question? Okay, if there are no more questions, there'll be a meditation on Sunday. And God bless you all. Thank you. And I say it at the end of every class. I will say it again. Maybe you're tired of hearing it, but I mean, each and every one of you is like a teacher for me. And each and every one of you makes it possible for me to grow. And I'm very grateful to each and every one of you for being here, for participating in this. So God bless you all. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody on Sunday. Thank you.
Yes, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.